Hey guys, welcome back to the show. I'm Parker Emerald, and this is The Conversation Station. Today's guest is a successful entrepreneur and founder of Forge Legend, an elite coaching organization that helps men achieve their full potential in faith, family, finance, and fitness. Through his personal experience and professional expertise, he empowers people to get unstuck and live their own legend through growth and leadership. He is a passionate and visionary leader who strives to forge a positive impact on the world. So without further ado, let's give a warm welcome to the one and only Coach Kevin. Welcome on, sir.
Thanks, Parker. Happy to be here, man. Very happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to do this. I just kind of want to start out with where your journey has brought you, where you started, where you are now, and what your mission is with everything you're doing.
Sure. I mean, like, we can start with the end, right? Like the mission. There is legend in every life. Like there is legend in every life. But very few people, not only do very few people live that legend, very few people give themselves permission to even think that maybe they're worthy of legend. I mean, when I say the word legend, that's a big word, right? It's a tough word to throw around. Hey, I am legend. You know, I wear a t-shirt that says this all the time. And it's crazy because people will laugh or they'll be like, really? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. So are you. Like, legend is an important concept because legend is what's left behind you that other people say about your impact, right? Legacy is easy. Just die and you leave a legacy. Whatever you were, that's what's left over, right? Like your deadbeat dads, they leave a legacy, right? Terrible moms, they leave a legacy. This is not legacy. This is legend. This is actually saying, hey, I was born to make a positive impact on the world. I was born to have my why and my who become one thing. My purpose and my character are going to become one thing. It takes a lifetime. It's something that you don't graduate from until you die, but it's something that I'm very passionate about because there is legend in every life.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because one of the things that is so important in all aspects of leadership success is the mindset. And the fact is you can't really become a legend until you believe you can and believe you are. You can't be something that you don't believe, at least on the positive side of things, because there are plenty of people who have negative things that they don't believe they are. But the reason they have those negative things is because they don't believe in the positive side. So
the main thing is your actions, like the choices and actions. So the most powerful creation, creative, like the most powerful part of anything you create is a choice. Like it's the choice that you make, right? Your choices and actions, though, they happen based on your beliefs. So you won't take an action you don't believe in. You won't choose something that you don't believe in, period. So, you know, the choices and actions that you make, if you sum total those up for your whole life, that equals your life. So every choice and action you make, that is your life, right? But where did they come from? They come from your beliefs. Well, where do your beliefs come from, right? I mean, at your age, it's like, well, where do I get these beliefs? Well, they come from the thoughts that you have. And some of those thoughts are yours, right? Like your own independent thoughts. Some of those come from your parents. Some of those come from church. Some of those come from school. Everyone around you is giving you thoughts, right? So where do your thoughts come from? Well, your thoughts come from whatever you're paying attention to. So in very literal terms, when you pay attention, you're spending your life.
Yeah.
Like what you're paying and attention is your life. So what we give our attention to creates thoughts. Those thoughts solidify into our beliefs. Our beliefs then drive our actions, and those actions sum totaled are who we are. And we got to be really careful with that. Like what we pay attention to creates our life. And I think people right now, especially between social media, YouTube, they're very casual with what they're paying attention to. And that is a dangerous choice to make.
Yeah, it is interesting, especially when you have literally everything at your fingertips, and it's all being thrown at you. And it's all being thrown at you where the algorithms, these social media platforms, are throwing things at you to find out what you will pay attention to. And so when I see people complaining about the algorithm and it showing them terrible things, they're like, the algorithm only shows me, the X terrible thing, X negative impact, but the algorithm is based on you. Right? And it goes the same for life. And so one thing I see people look at like the algorithm and they use that as a negative term, but I think it's interesting because when we look at our social media algorithms, it's a reflection of ourselves because of how advanced these things are. They learn what you pay attention to. So,
Well, it is. It is. So, look, first off, it's not a fair fight, right? I mean, totally evolved supercomputers running, AI that has millions and millions, if not billions, of inputs. It's not a fair fight. I mean, your mind's a lot of things, but a supercomputer meant to parse out that kind of data, it's not, right? It's a lot of great things. It's way cooler than a supercomputer, but it is not good. And this thing has unlimited tests to figure out what you'll pay attention to. Now, what I want you to know, though, is people aren't bad, right? Because they're interested in negative things. We're interested in negative things because our mind was created to what? To help us survive. Like the physical mind that we have, our brain, its main function is to help us survive. And so it is very, very good at finding threats. And so the reason we tend to look at negative things more is we are worried that that thing could hurt us, right? That's why the news is so negative. We pay attention because we don't want to lose something. So, when loss aversion, right, or the fear of losing something is much, much, much heavier than what we're willing to do for something. So in other words, you'll run 10 times farther chasing me. If I took $100 from you, Parker, and you were like, I can catch that old man, like he's big, I got him. You would run 10 times farther to catch me having taken $100 from you than you would run to make $100.
yeah.
If I said, hey, you're going to have to run 6 miles to catch me because I might be slow, but I can go for a long time. And you'd be like, yeah, but it's the principle of the thing. You took $100 from me, right? And if I said, hey, you go run 6 miles for $100, that might interest you, that might not.
But
You might
no,
not be willing to do it.
what people would probably say is, oh, it's only $100.
Right, exactly. But man, if I took it from you, now it's not only $100. Now it's the principle, but that's because you lost something. That quote unquote principle is your mind saying, hey, that was mine. That is mine, and he has it now. It's the
Yeah.
same $100. Like objectively, it's the same $100.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because you have to understand that, and then you also have to figure out how to leverage positive. You have to take positive things and put them into a negative scenario sometimes in order to get the thing done. Right? That's why with 30 podcasts and 30 episodes in 30 days, I decided that, and then I messaged a bunch of former podcast guests and told all of my peers that that's what I was doing. Because if I failed, if I didn't follow through, how would I look in their eyes, right? And so it all stems from an understanding, and that's one of the things I've been focusing on recently. In my mind, is the understanding of yourself is so important. So that negative scenario, you might not run those 6 miles for $100, but you might run those 6 miles for, I don't know, some keepsake, right? Mm-hmm. So you have to understand what it is that motivates you, and not even motivation, what is it you can use to keep yourself disciplined?
Well, it's why are you? It's your why. Why do you exist? Why? And hey, look, when you're young, it's hard. Like but the thing is, no one else can tell you why you are. I mean, they will. If you don't know why you are, if you don't know what your purpose is, the world, like anyone in the world, will just tell you, hey, you're this. They'll just tell you whatever's convenient for them. And when you're young, that's fine, right? Like your parents tell you who you are, school tells you who you are. Like that's to kind of have you try on some things. But at a point when you get to be an adult, you have to decide who you are. And that's not a perfect process. Like you said something earlier, it's about knowing yourself and seeing yourself. Well, I want you to think about this, right? When's the last time you walked into a giant room of people, or at least a big room of people, maybe 100 or 200 people?
Oh, I'm trying to think. Probably.
Did you ever go to like a sports game or a concert?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. The last time I was in a room with like 300 people, that was like in last winter-ish. I think it was like March, because I was giving a speech. So it was
Perfect. So you walked in there to give a speech. You walked right up to the podium, and you're looking at hundreds of people in the room, right? There was a person in that room that you couldn't see. I don't know if you know that. There's probably lots of people you couldn't see, but there's the one person in that room that you couldn't see is you. The healthy eye, right? The healthy eye cannot see itself. So if your eyes are healthy, you can't see your own eyes. It's not possible, right? You can't bite your own teeth. You can't touch the tip of this finger with the tip of this finger, but you can't see your own eyes. The only way you can see your eyes is if they're unhealthy. Meaning, like if you have glaucoma, right, then you'll see kind of some fogginess. You'll see stars with glaucoma. If you have cataracts, you'll see the fogginess, right? This kind of scales over your eyes. So the healthy eye can't see itself. The healthy human being also is not capable of seeing him or herself. It's just not possible, right? We are out focused, right? We are focused on threats and opportunities. That's what we are. The way that we see ourselves is in other people. The way that we see ourselves is in the interactions that we have and having coaches or groups that we're a part of. Why? Because we just can't see ourselves. Like the way we're talking right now on this podcast, this minute, I can see myself on the screen as I talk to you. That's incredibly weird, right? Until Zoom and FaceTime came around, human beings were never able to do that. I have an entire section of my coaching, which is me sending you a video and you making me a video back with your answer. But the reason I have you make a video back is I know you're going to be looking at who? Yourself in the camera. Right? You do it with your phone, and I know you're going to be you're really answering yourself. But that is brand new in our evolution. Like really, we rely on other people to see us. Like the people you surround yourself with help you to see you. So if those people have good in their heart for you, if those people want what's best for you, great, you can grow up and out of someplace. If those people don't, they will constantly inform you that you need to be what they want you to be. They will constantly manipulate you to be what they want to be, because to see yourself, you need other people.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because you got to surround yourself properly in all of these things, and that is so important, is being intentional about your network, because your network can be full of anyone you want, but in order to get the new network you desire, you have to eliminate the network you have. So you have to cut people out, and that sucks, because again, human nature, to survive, we always want to have people around us, but sometimes in order to be around the right people, you have to be around very few people for a long time.
So I don't know if you even have to cut them out. So I don't even know if you have to actually cut people out and be like, hey, you don't hang out with me. You are not good for me. Don't hang out with me. Like this happens a lot with people who have like a drinking problem, right? They don't want to leave their friends. Like they don't even have friends. They have people who like to drink. The people who like to drink with them don't even like them. They don't even know who they are, because most of the time they're drunk. They just like to drink, and they like other people who like to drink because that gives them an excuse to drink. And so they'll be like, oh, I got to leave all my friends behind. I'm like, they're not your friends. They're alcohol's friends. They're the alcoholic and use friends. If you just stop drinking and stop going to places where people drink, guess who's no longer in your life? Those people. Not because you threw them out. Not because you said, hey, I'm never talking to you again. Not because you don't invite them to some, non-drinking activity that you're going to go to because you've given up drinking. They're just not going to come.
Yeah. Because
they're not interested anymore. And so a lot of times I think we make a lot of anxiety because we do need people, right? We are social animals, right? Like human beings are social animals. Think about this, right? When we clap, right? We can clap. And of course we're on the internet, so it's not going to work because of the timing of the computers. But if we were in the same room, me and you could start clapping together, no problem. Hundreds of thousands of people can clap together at a stadium in unison. Do you realize that we are the only species on the entire planet that can do that? No other species can do that. None of them. Not birds, not monkeys, no other species. Why is this? Because in order for me and you to clap at the same time, you can't hear me clap and then clap back. Because you'd be late, right? It would be like, we wouldn't just be one. You have to know when I'm going to clap. You have to feel when I'm going to clap, and then you clap at the same moment. And have you ever noticed, like with a crowd, they'll start clapping and they get faster and faster and faster? How the hell does everyone know to get faster? How do they know what pace to get faster? They just know because they feel it. Because we are one of the very few, the only species on the earth, right, that can imagine together. We imagine. When I'm talking right now, if I start talking about an elephant riding a motorbike off a cliff and he's jumping a giraffe eating an ice cream, like you just had a whole experience in your mind. Like we just imagined that together. Now your giraffe might have been pink and purple, and mine might have been the right colors, and your elephant might have been really skinny and frail, and mine might have been huge and hilarious, like on a clown bike. It doesn't matter, but we just had an experience together because we can do that, and we need that. And if when we surround ourselves with low energy people, with people who want very different things than us, then what happens is, what are we imagining, right? It goes back to what I said at the beginning of this. Then we're paying attention to stupid stuff. And stupid stuff leads to stupid thoughts, and stupid thoughts lead to stupid beliefs, and stupid beliefs leads to stupid actions, and stupid actions lead to stupid consequences that leads to ultimately a stupid life.
Yeah, yeah, and it is interesting because I think that for a lot of people, we've all experienced a time in our lives where we look back and we are like, oh well, I was surrounding myself with stupid people doing stupid things who had different ideas for their life.
But
But
guess what you were?
sometimes,
Guess what
sometimes
you were in that moment? One of
stupid.
those stupid people
Yeah,
doing stupid things. You just were, because that's why you were there. Now, it might have only been for a minute, and you were like, oh, yeah, nope, not my crowd, right? If I bring you, like, right now off the street, Parker, into prison, you're immediately going to want to get the hell out of there. Why? That doesn't fit you. That's not who you are. Those aren't the thoughts you have. Those aren't the beliefs you have. You don't even want to touch that stuff, right? But what happens is when you get to someone who's just a little bit, it's like between you and prison, there's all this space, right? But you get to someone who's just a little bit, they're close to you, but they really don't want the same things. It gets harder to perceive that right away. And we kind of get lulled into it, especially if you're like the smartest guy in the room. That's cool, right? Because it's fun to feel smart. You feel important, like, wow. But the truth is, if you're the smartest guy in the room, you need a new room. And you need a new room really, really fast. Because that is going to not do much good for you.
yeah, yeah, and I think the interesting thing is you don't have to be the smartest, but you also don't have to be the dumbest in the room. Where I think it's important that the people in your room should be people on a similar path, but it doesn't have to be a similar path in one element of life, right? They might not be people with the same career path, but they might be people with the same spiritual, same emotional, same other paths, and those people below you, it becomes your responsibility to help them get to where you are at and help them eventually surpass you. Your goal, if you're in a room and you have people above you and people below you, your goal should be to take those people below you in that room and bring them with you to the next one.
Absolutely, and to figure out what those guys are talking about up there. I'll remember. I'll never forget. I went to a group. I went to a group like a mastermind, and I was sitting at the table with one of the top real estate agents in the U.S., one of the top mortgage guys in the U.S., and then one of the top finance guys in the U.S. And then there's me, and I'm like from this tiny town in South Louisiana. I own a marketing company. I really probably shouldn't even have belonged there. I really couldn't even afford to go to the thing. I just made it happen. And I remember them talking about money. And it was so great. I couldn't even keep up. Like I had no idea what they were talking. I could barely understand that we were talking about money. And I remember thinking like, man, I want to understand this. Like what in the hell are they even talking about? Like they're on such a different level than me that they see pieces that I don't see. Now today, I can very easily have that conversation, right? That was like 8 years ago. I could very easily, but it made me, I grew so much trying to figure out, hey, what are they talking about? I would pull them off after, like, what do you mean by this? What do you mean by that? Like, while they were talking, though, I didn't interrupt for them to start teaching me. I just listened. I'm like, wow, there's a whole world I don't see, and they see it. So cool, I can learn from those people, and I can start leveling up. And then I can help the people who don't see it below me when I'm in the room and I'm talking. They're like, hey, what does that mean? Cool, let me tell you, because I didn't know this either, right? The ego will tell you that once you know something, then pretend like you always knew it.
Yeah, but I think it's interesting because the ego tells you that, but that is the fast track to it is the fast track back to where you were. It's the fast track back to not knowing, because when you pretend that you always knew something, you remove the human element, and when you act like you always know something, the way you act, it creates your beliefs just as much as your beliefs create how you act. It's a mutual relationship, and so you're gonna be. It can spiral really quickly. So it's important to maintain that level of humility and stay humble and understand. Well, okay, if someone asks you, so the X thing, you're like, oh yeah, I didn't know that for a while. I was terrible at it. I didn't know how to ride a bike when I was 2. I learned when I was 4. I didn't always know how to ride a bike. That would be, if I told you that would be an obvious lie.
You didn't come out of your mom popping a wheelie, like you were actually on a bike. Like it was the weirdest thing. They delivered you on a bike, first kid ever. There's video of you riding around in the but it's like that, right? We all forget. Like there was a point in everyone's life that when we pooped in the toilet, that was awesome. There was a big
Yeah.
group of people who were like, "Yeah, you pooped in the toilet. We don't have to clean up after you." Like, that even pooping, we had to learn how to do it. Come on, man. Of course, we have to learn everything.
Yeah, I find it kind of interesting because it's an interesting thing to navigate, though. Like, navigate the people that aren't on the same path as you, and navigate the places you find them, but also navigating the people that might not be on the path, but the people who you can help get onto the path because they have the desire to be there, but they don't know how. But sometimes that desire isn't vocalized. Sometimes that desire is internal more than external. And sometimes you have to engage with them. But if you engage and then they're not going to reciprocate any sort of engagement or help or take the steps, but they just want you to do it for them, well, then at that point you've got to understand that you are wrong about them wanting to be on the path.
Well, I mean, I think all of us are on our own paths, right? Sometimes people come into your life for a reason, for a season, or for a lifetime, right? There's so few people, like so few people who are going to be with you for a lifetime, right? But understanding like, hey, is this person in my life for a reason? Like just this one thing? Like maybe I'm broken down on the side of the road and a nice person stops and helps me change my tire, right? I'm not going to have a lifelong relationship with them. They were just there. Hey, there was a reason they were there. I can be in other people's lives for a reason. Sometimes they're there for a season. Like sometimes people are in our life, for quite a while before they're not in our life. Great, that's a season. And then sometimes people are there for a lifetime. And understanding the difference between those people, because sometimes it's not that people don't want to be on the path with you. They're just on a different path. Like sometimes we don't take the time to say, hey, where are you going? And where am I going? And like, hey, you know what? We could get in the same bus all the way to, halfway, but at halfway we're going to be going different directions. And that's cool. Like we could be cool with that. It's a lot of times we get caught in this concept of like, where's the right place to go as if there's only one. Thank goodness for us, like 8 billion people, there can be 8 billion destinations on any given topic, that work or don't work. We all have our own free will. We all have our own agency. We tend to value freedom really highly, but then we tend to not want to give it to other people and kind of pretend like everybody has to be free, but they need to do the right thing, like how we define the right thing. So, I mean, sometimes it's just really, you think you're going to the same place and it turns out, no, they were going over there and I was going over here. And if we can learn to be cool with that and not take it personal, most people, when they break the path, they have this big explosion of like, oh, well, you're not who I thought you were. Well, maybe you just didn't know. Like maybe you didn't listen. They were probably telling you who they were the whole time. You were just imagining they were the same as you because you weren't really listening, and you were more in your own head than listening to what they were saying. Most people are pretty open about what they're doing.
Yeah, it's very easy to get caught up in the desire to have that person in your life so much that you lie to yourself about who they are. And so,
especially if they're a pretty girl at your age, especially if they're a pretty girl, you're like, you'll overlook all sorts of things. You're like, oh, yeah, of course we're going the same direction.
well, yeah, exactly. But I think the interesting thing is, in the journey of life, there is only one way to go, and that's forward. Realistically, the most important part is to take action towards something, right? Even if it's an arbitrary goal, even if you just pick something, the momentum you'll build by moving forward, by figuring out what is intriguing to you right now that is going to be a positive in your life, and go towards that. But let's say along the journey, you're like, oh, okay, well, I thought I was going to go this way at this turn, but I want to go this way. But because you've been building momentum for so long, going towards something else, that momentum will carry over with you as you turn at this fork in the road. And what I like to say is that when you have momentum, what might have been a road block at the beginning becomes a road rock, in the fact that it becomes a little pebble on the road because you have enough momentum that you don't even see it.
Sure, for sure. I mean, you said something that's interesting to me is like, even if it's an arbitrary goal. But literally, tell me the goal that's not arbitrary, because they're all our choice. Because what we mean by arbitrary is like, oh, well, we just picked that. Well, guess what? You just pick your whole life. Like you literally pick your whole life. You are a free, powerful, independent person. everywhere you find yourself, right? You chose to be there. Now, when you're younger, like I get it. If you're 15 and your mom and dad say you're going to be here, you don't have full free will. You can do some weird things. You can run away, but let's not go crazy here. So you don't have complete free will when you're young, but as you get to be an adult, you really do. And so people are like, well, that's just arbitrary. Well, of course it is. I mean, we all look up to, as far as like if you're a businessman, you almost have to look up to like Elon Musk and Steve Jobs. Be like, wow, right? And then what does Elon Musk do with his rocket? Like he shoots his own car to Mars. Like that's one of the coolest things I've ever heard of, right? Like how arbitrary is that? But like the rest of history, people are going to read about this guy shooting his car to Mars, right? Because why? Because he wanted to.
Like
And if he creates electrical energy that saves humanity, why did he do that? Because he wanted to. It really boils down. I think so many of us are looking for someone to give us permission to be who we already are. Like that's what legend is all about. Is like I am who I am. I want to do this, right? Why am I a good dad? Because I want to. You don't have to be a good dad. Look around. There's millions and millions of terrible fathers, and lightning's not striking them all. Right? I mean, but I choose to because that's who I want to be. That is who I am. But that is from a place of desire. Because when you let it be from a place of desire, it can be positive all the time. Hey, I want this, and now I want something else. Great. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Now you got to look at what you committed to and all that. You can't just drop everyone in your past. I think people get kind of funny about that, but man, there's nothing wrong with just wanting. At the end of the day, there's very little that's not arbitrary, and there's nothing wrong with that. In my belief, like personally, God's greatest gift to man was free agency, like free will, which means we can choose. We choose who we are, we choose who we show up to be, and that's awesome. So hey, I just made it up. Good, we'll keep making it up. Every single thing you see in the world, every single thing that you see, every single thing, all of it, somebody thought of it, and then it was created. They had this idea, and then they made it.
I mean, I think the interesting thing is, if look at Elon Musk, right? Let's say that this entire time, this is obviously not how it probably happened, but let's say he was 8 years old and he decided, I want to send a car into space, okay? And he stuck to that goal and went through the process of okay, well then I need to be able to build rockets, okay? Well then I'm going to need X, Y, and Z. So the interesting thing is the arbitrary goal, the random thought, can have so many unforeseen benefits if you just stick to it. One of my repeat guests who I've had on twice, former cop, shot in the line of duty, super cool dude. But what he always says is the hardest decision in life is figuring out what you want to do. And once you figure that out, the rest is easy because you just set a plan in motion and stick to the plan. And I think that is fundamentally true because if I look for 30 podcast episodes in 30 days, I randomly decided, I was just sitting there in a coffee shop and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do 30 episodes in 30 days. And I just started figuring out how I would make that happen. Right. And then realizing that I didn't necessarily want all of them to be with guests. I made a sub show where it's just me talking to the audience, and so the benefits you get from setting a goal, creating a plan, and going forward is so huge, and it's going to be bigger than anything you can possibly imagine.
Well, let me take a little different direction on that. The hardest thing in the world to know is what you want, right? Here's what I think, and I don't disagree with it generally, but actually, if you think about that for a second, it's not possible that you don't know what you want. The hardest thing to do in life is to be honest with yourself completely. And when you are honest with yourself completely, it's pretty freaking easy to know what you want, right?
Yeah.
And the problem is a lot of us, for example, how old are you right now, partner?
16.
Yeah, okay, 16. Very eloquent 16-year-old PS. I'll give you that little gold star. But it at 16 years old, if what you really want is a girlfriend and a motorbike, but you know that really, the high-minded people want intergenerational wealth and legacy and to have an impact on society, there's this little thing inside of you that you're like, well, I really just want a girlfriend and a motorbike, but I know I'm supposed to want this. And then we start fighting this, well, I'm supposed to want, right? And then what's fun about supposed to is it's kind of like they, like, well, they say. They is who we call the people we imagine exist. Like, really, they is just our own excuse. It's our own fear. And we give it a name, they. Right? They won't let me do this. They will take this. They is nobody. They's you. They's your own fear. They is your own insecurity. Right? And supposed to is like they's ugly twin sister. Yeah, so, well, I'm supposed to want this. Well, if you don't, you don't. Right? Like, I mean, for example, I'm supposed to love dogs and animals. Like, everyone loves dogs and animals, right? I just don't. I don't care. I don't want to kick them. I'm not going to like swerve my car to hit them or anything, but I just don't bond with animals. I really enjoy bonding with people. I'm supposed to have, I enjoy it in other people. My son absolutely loves dogs. He's like a dog whisperer. It's the coolest thing. I'm sure one day I'll own a dog because of my son. But the truth is, I don't bond with animals. Like, they're animals. Like, I don't care. And I don't think that makes me a bad person. I accept that other people do, and I accept that that can be a really meaningful, powerful connection, but that's not who I am. And if I'm supposed to love animals, well, I don't. And I could pretend like I do. Like, I could pretend, some people will say, well, oh, that's my fur baby, right? Now, I have 5 kids. That's not your fur baby. That's not a baby. It ain't the same thing. It doesn't even live long enough to be the same thing most of the time, because the baby's like 18 years old and then it breaks your heart when it leaves and tells you you're stupid, right? Like, your child's with you pretty much a lifetime, right? And so it's different. And so I don't have those feelings. Hey, am I right? I don't know. I'm very happy to be disagreed with. I can see the internet lighting up right now about how terrible I am. I mean, oh my gosh, he said pets.
Coach Kevin is a dog hater. Everyone,
exactly.
It's going to be trending on Twitter. Hashtag cancel Kevin.
Let me tell you a secret. Like, I don't like your parrot or your snake or your cat or any of them, right? I'll tolerate your fish because it doesn't get up on me and I don't have to touch it, right? But that's just the truth. But see, in my mind, even while I'm saying this and we're joking about getting canceled, even while I'm saying, my mind is racing. And it's like, oh man, you better not say that. Be careful. People are going to hear that. But guess what? It's the truth. That is the truth of how I feel. That's the truth of who I am. So the hardest thing is not knowing what you want. You know what you want. If I say, and don't answer this, okay? But if I said to you right now, hey, Parker, what's the worst thing you've ever done? Hey, Parker, what's the worst lie you've ever told? Bam, you know it right there. You know 2 or 3 of them. And you're like, oh, crap, do I have to say it, right? What happens then is we start like a negotiation with ourselves about, can I really show this or not? I don't know. Like, we have no question what the worst thing we've ever done is. We have no question what the worst lie we've ever told is. But we will start a negotiation of how truthful can we be, not only to other people, but to ourselves first. And so the hard part is just being honest with yourself. Like, man, I'm overweight. Like, I'm fat. You can't see it. Like, this is kind of a complimentary angle right now. But I'm overweight. Like, I need to lose probably about 70 pounds. Right? I do. And I can sit here and tell you I want to lose weight. I don't think it's true. Like, my actions don't pan that out. I want to lose weight. That's true. Like, I want to, but I haven't really put together what it's going to take to do that. And I think that when we get honest with ourselves, we can start making real incremental progress instead of pretending like we're going to be some superhero, right? Like, superhero movies are fun to watch, but they're movies, guys. Like, no, you're not going to throw a hammer and that's going to shoot you to the sun. You're going to fix all your problems in 1 hour-and-a-half episode that has 3 sequels. It's just not going to be that way. That's not how life works.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting what you said about fighting with what you're supposed to think. And I dealt with that recently because I just earlier this week released an episode that was just me talking. And I was talking about ADHD and a lot of the ways how I think it's kind of bullshit in a lot of ways. But what it was that episode was the scariest one for me to release, the scariest one for me to record, the hardest episode to record, because I was talking about things that I knew that I knew a large percentage of the population would disagree with, and it is this internal fight. But you also but to overcome that, you kind of just have to accept that no matter what you say, a large percentage of people are going to disagree. And no matter what you do, a large percentage of people are going to think what you're doing is wrong. But at the same time, you have to search within yourself to make sure that you, like you said, be honest with yourself. You've got to make sure that what you are saying, that you believe that that is right. And at the end of the day, you will always know whether what you're doing is right or wrong. Like you said, if you ask someone what's the worst thing they ever did, they know. And so it is not. We have this deception that it's hard to know the difference between right and wrong. The difference between right and wrong is so obvious. It is so blatantly obvious that I could ask someone right now, is doing X thing right or wrong? And they'll know the answer within themselves, but they'll fight. Like an alcoholic, you ask him, is drinking X amount of alcohol a day right? Is it good for you? And they're gonna, and in their mind, they'll probably hear a no. But the alcoholic side of them is gonna be like, okay, well, here's all the ways I can reason. Here's all the ways that I can force myself to think, not believe, to think that it's right.
Well, I mean, an alcoholic is a little different case because they have that addiction, right? And the addiction acts as, you're right, like it acts as like a second person almost in them. Like when I'm coaching addicts or when I'm coaching people who are attached to addicts, I'm always like, hey, you gotta realize that there's like two people in there. There's George and then there's George the addict. And they don't really function like the same person. Like it's almost like you got to see them. They are one person, and all of the choices they make are theirs. So there's no justification. Like, don't hear me saying they get off the hook because they were drunk or whatever. But they have these competing. They know that it's bad for them, but they're gonna do it right. It's just this huge reasoning here. So you usually come on podcasts, right? Because you have answers, right? So let me just, instead of bringing an answer to your podcast, Parker, let me bring to you a very interesting question. And it's a question that you can wrestle with your whole life, right? Here is, to me, one of the most interesting questions to ask. And you can gauge how honest someone is and how honest they are with themselves, right? Is you say, hey, what's something you believe that most people disagree with? What's something you believe that most people disagree with? Now, this is dangerous, right? Like, for our social brain goes into like, oh, crap.
Oh my,
I don't want to say that, especially not on the internet, right? And right now your mind is flooding with things. See how easy it is to know the answer, but how hard it is to be honest about it? Because there's answers even that you're not even seeing. Your mind right now is packing away. Oh, don't think about that. Don't do this because he might say it out loud. Let's hide that away, right? Because remember, your mind was created for what? For survival. And social death, social getting killed socially is a very real way to die. And that's been true way before the cancel culture. Like, being able to be accepted is important. And so expressing an opinion that almost everyone disagrees with, but that you think is right, is tough. Because here's why, right? Like, think about socially. Are you better off always telling the truth, but everyone thinks you're a liar?
Yeah.
Or always lying and everyone always thinks you're telling the truth. In which of those scenarios are you better off as a human being?
Yeah, it's interesting because if you know what you're telling is the truth, then yes, that's going to feel better. But then the social element of our being is going to be like, no. That is an interesting question to fight with.
That's the thing. How many guys do we know of in history who they've told the truth their whole life and everyone punishes them for it, and then 100 years later we're like, wow, that dude was right. Nikola Tesla saying, hey, we could pass power wirelessly. We could do all this cool stuff. And I was like, man, you're crazy. That's crazy. He's not crazy, right? But the thing is, because of that dynamic socially, because people thinking you're telling the truth is more important than whether or not you actually tell the truth socially. Okay, I'm not saying morally, I'm not saying in every aspect, I'm just saying socially. If you just look at it socially, you get a lot more social capital when people trust you. So you would think that the human mind would have developed as like a scientist. That the human mind would have said, hey, we should look at evidence, figure out what's most likely, and then do those things. But it didn't because of this social drive, right? It didn't because it needs to be believed. What's the easiest way to be believed sometimes? to tell the same lie everyone else is telling.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because if we look at society, right, as a whole, it is interesting to see how like what the lie everyone else is telling evolves, right? And like I think you just see that as to what is socially accepted and what is counterculture. Now, most often times the thing we're being told is counterculture is actually the thing everyone's doing, and the thing we're being told isn't counterculture is counterculture. That's just the nature of society. But
Man, it's complicated right now. Like this is something I don't envy of you and your generation. This is because I think it is legitimately harder to grow up right now because I don't know how you would know what's true.
it
I mean,
it
you realize
is.
when I grew up, there was 13 stations on the TV. They didn't all work. So there wasn't, I mean, there was 13 buttons, but they didn't even all have channels. So there was like, we would get news from like two places, maybe three. That's it. And so we all saw the same thing. So we all essentially lived the same narrative, roughly, with little differences, but not a whole lot, right? Today, there's so many sources of information, so many sources of disinformation, and almost a complete inability to tell which is which. No matter how smart you are, it's very difficult to know what's real and what's not. And I feel for you guys, man, because it forces you to know who you are. And that's what we're talking about, right? Is can you tell yourself the truth? Can you be yourself? Like, can you be yourself no matter what happens?
Yeah. And I think that in terms of being yourself no matter what happens, that's been the biggest thing with the episodes where I'm just talking because it's just me. I'm not influenced by whoever I'm talking to because whether I want to or not, humans inherently, because we are social creatures, are going to align what we say based on who we're around. So if I'm doing an interview with Coach Kevin versus doing an interview with my best friend, I'm going to conduct myself differently purely because of human nature.
Well,
and so
now
it's been
my feelings are hurt because I just assumed that was your best friend. That's why I was on the podcast. So now you've lost
crap.
social capital with me. You're out, man. You're out.
Dang it. Dang it. Dang it.
No, but you can't help but do that, right? So it's not possible because again, if you're listening, now there is a way to do it where you don't get carried away with it, is to not listen, is to constantly be chattering back, right? So if every time you're talking to me, Parker, I'm just chattering back in my head, what an idiot, this kid doesn't know anything. Guess what? I'm not going to be influenced because I'm not really listening. I'm just waiting for my turn to talk, and I'm waiting for the way I can show how dumb you are, which if that sounds familiar, it's kind of how most people are having discourse right now, and it's the best way to destroy a relationship, and it will be the best way I can think of to destroy a country, because we all start having our own reality. The risk right now is like people have stopped disagreeing, and they've started living in totally separate realities.
Yeah.
And that's kind of dangerous. Like that,
Well,
that
it's
has
such
real issues. That's how divorces happen. But on the level of society, that's how chaos, civil war, and worse happen.
Yeah, and I think the issue is that now with social media, where there is a subcategory for every type of thought, for every person, and the way that these things tailor to our beliefs, we live in a reality where the things we consume tend to be things that we agree with, as opposed to disagree with, and it skews our view of reality.
And there's an algorithm designed to find which things we agree with and only show us those things. And this is where the algorithms are not. I don't think they were evil. Like I know there are people pulling the strings, and it's certain. But I think even without people pulling the strings, even if you say there's no person trying to manipulate me, the computer's just trying to see what you like. Once it knows, that's what it shows you. So me and you don't see. When I was young, Parker, everybody saw the same front page. Here's the paper, it's the same. Everybody sees the same front page. So that helps. That's not true anymore. You guys don't see the same stuff, right? You only see kind of either what you agree with or what you very much disagree with, which warps your sense of reality. Like, think about it. Let's imagine I was a guy 1,000 years ago who believed that I was actually a rhinoceros. Something happened at birth, and I'm actually a rhinoceros. I'm not a person at all. I'm a rhinoceros, right?
Yeah.
What would happen in my village 1,000 years ago? I mean, I might be ostracized for that. I might, or maybe they just tolerate me, and I walk around with like a rhinoceros nose, right? And everyone's just like, Kevin, okay. I mean, yeah, you're a big guy, dude, but you're not a rhino. But whatever, like, who cares, right? How many other people would I find in my village of 200-300 people that thought they were rhinoceroses? Statistically, probably none.
0, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so maybe I would find someone who tolerated it enough, but maybe not. Today, that same person could go online, and I mean, I just made that up off my head, but who knows? Like, they could go find 10 or 20 other people who also think they're rhinoceroses, because when you're doing statistics, I don't think that as human beings, we really understand how many people 7 billion people is.
Yeah.
We not only do we not understand it, we can't understand it.
It's impossible for us to comprehend.
Right, so statistically, it's not that everything's there, but damn near it. So now I can find my 30 guys who also believe they're rhinoceroses. We can give that a name, and we can hang out only with each other via FaceTime. That's it. We don't hang out with anyone else. If you don't believe we're a rhinoceros, you don't get to be with us. And so now, what is our attention? Our attention is on that, which drives our thoughts, then our beliefs, then our actions. So now we're acting in this little bubble, but that bubble is so removed, right? Like, let me show you and your listeners how you cannot understand how many a billion is, right? Do you know how many days it takes to create 1,000,000 seconds?
What is it like? 2 days or 3 days?
It's about 2 weeks.
Okay,
I
2
can do
weeks.
the calculation. I didn't think I was going to talk about this, but it's about let me see, 1,000,000 seconds. How long in weeks? Right, so it's like 13 weeks, I think. No, it's 2 weeks. 1.65 weeks.
Okay.
Okay. How many weeks do you think 1,000,000,000 seconds is? Don't look it up. You just got to guess. Do like I did in the 90s.
Probably like 1,000 years or something insane.
It's 34 years.
Oh my god.
You see 1,000,000 seconds lots of times, but you won't see 1,000,000,000 seconds 3 times in your life, more than likely. You might, but I won't.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you certainly won't see it 4 times or 5 times. Like, think about it. The difference between 1,000,000 and 1,000,000,000 seconds is enormous. It's enormous. But we don't think of it like that. We just think, oh, billion and next number's, million, next number's billion.
Well, think about it. 100 seconds is half a minute. 1,000 seconds, or 100 seconds is a minute and a half ish. 1,000 seconds is what, like, I don't know. But and then 1,000,000 seconds is another big jump, and so it is interesting. One of my favorites.
1,000,000 seconds is not 2 weeks. 1,000,000,000 seconds is 31 years. Think about that for a second. Your mind doesn't think like that. Your mind just sees million, billion, billions next, then trillion. We pretend like we know what trillion means. Who even knows what a trillion seconds is?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Google knows everything, right? So we can find out. I'll tell you in a second. A trillion seconds is 32,000, just under 32,000 years.
Oh my gosh.
So think about that. We're terrible at doing that math, right?
Yeah. Oh wow. That is a lot of years. But I think it is interesting. And I think the issue that we're seeing is the fact that because there was a baseline, right? There was a very obvious baseline of a society. But now with so many subcultures, it's almost impossible to find a baseline, right? It is impossible to find the baseline.
Well, you're never going to find it because it has to be created.
Exactly.
And I think it was created by default. In the beginning, it was created because, I mean, let's be real, we just couldn't get news think about the Battle of New Orleans, right? Happened 3 months after the war was over. But no one knew because it took that long for mail to get there, so the generals who started the battle didn't know the war was over. Like, the war was already over, but no one knew. So it happened 3 months after the war, right? Because why? Just technology. Just the way they passed information was really slow. We've sped up. It's good that we have this information technology. Don't hear me saying the internet's bad, social media. I don't think that. But I think that it's gotten so fast and so prolific that now it's almost flipped, or we don't know what to do with it, right? And so we have to be really careful with how we're using it. We're going to have to choose a baseline. And that's what you kind of see happening in our society.
But the crazy thing now is every person has to choose their baseline for themselves. And then you have to be very intentional about finding people but see, the issue is now you're in your own subculture of your baseline.
So that was always true. It just wasn't so obvious.
Yeah.
Now it's really super obvious. The difference now is no matter what I believe, if I think Hitler was a great guy and I want to high five him, then there's a group of people online I can find to do that. If I think he was a terrible guy and we should destroy every picture of him that's ever existed, I can find a group of people on the internet who want to do that. So what we have to remember is that the group of people who agree with us are not representative of the whole world. And we have to start thinking, hey, I'm probably not right or wrong about something. I'm finding what works for me in my life, right? Other people are doing that, and we can accept the data that they bring us.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's an interesting thing to explore, especially with the fact I think where it really becomes an issue is when we don't let parents be the baseline for their children. Right?
Okay.
And
Yeah, all right.
obviously that's going to come down to the parent deciding to be that baseline. But sometimes when we look at like the fact is education starts with the parent, and so the hardest thing is that in this society where there's so much going on, and anything a child believes, again, even children can find what they believe online. You get this issue where when you're 4, right, and you say and you decide, right, because if in the 80s a 4-year-old said something complete that their parents didn't believe to be true, and something that was, a little bit far out there, and just a kid being a kid, right?
I can give you a real example. You ready?
Okay.
My son is 5 years old, maybe 4. He's right on that line of 4 and 5. We live in California, right? It's like late at night. He comes running into my room and he's like, I'm scared. Like he had a nightmare, right? I'm like, okay, well, what's going on? And he's like, I'm scared a snake is going to fly into my room and bite me. I mean, and what did I say? Well, cool. That's awesome because snakes don't fly. So you don't have to worry. Like our house was kind of on a cliff. So I'm like, dude, snakes don't fly. Dad, they do. I saw it on YouTube. I'm like, they don't fly. Like snakes do not fly, right? Relax. So he leaves. And about 5 minutes later, he comes in. And I'll never forget, he had his iPad. And he slapped it on the bed like it was just like he just slapped it on the bed and pressed play. And here's a video of this one species of snake in Africa that climbs a tree, jumps off, and then moves itself in a certain way that it gets lifted. So there is a flying snake. Look it up. It blew my mind, right?
I've seen it, yeah.
And so now I'm like, great, there's flying snakes. So how did I calm my son? Well, I went and got a globe and I showed him where Africa was and how a snake can't fly all the way across the ocean to California. And then that helped him to feel safe. And then we had a big conversation about how, yeah, okay, this one place has a flying snake. We don't have that anywhere near us, right? But in that case, it's kind of innocuous. In that case, it's something that doesn't have permanent damage or permanent problem. We just help them. But you're right. Like they can get a very dangerous, dangerous and hurtful idea. And it's very difficult to route it out. And that's on every parent to take the responsibility that they are the primary educator of their child.
Yeah, but I also think that we've kind of strayed away from that, where a lot of parents have gotten to the point where they almost believe that school is a one-stop shop, right?
Well, it's because school in some ways is a slavery of the mind, but it's a slavery we all pass through, so we think it's normal. When slavery existed in America, people thought it was normal because, hey, why? We've just always had it. For generations we've had it. That's how people are. We don't think it's normal now. If we were to go back and see someone enslaved, it would just be absolutely offensive. I can't imagine, even though slavery does still exist, it looks very different, but even that, just the idea of slavery is horrible to us. But at the time, it was really normal.
Yeah.
Like, oh, well, this is just a normal thing. This is what happens. This is what people do. And so with school, I think we've all lived the system. It's, what are we, 3-4 generations into, public schooling? We think that that's just how it has to be. And we've lost touch that there's an alternative. And my kids are in school. I mean, they went to school, right? But I'm starting to see that this school system that looks like a prison system has some problems. And I'm going to have to counteract that problem, right? But because I want my children to be free thinkers and people who understand how to have and use their freedom responsibly. And I don't think school's really good at teaching people that. I think school teaches you how to be a sheep who follows orders and who complies to someone else's rules, some imaginary authority.
That's not that when it was created, that was not a flaw, that was a feature, right? That was,
Sure.
and I think it's interesting because it teaches that. And then what it does is it creates a society that is really easy to control, because you teach people that when they're shown what to think, they should think that, and so then you just show them what you want them to think.
Well, guess what else makes it though? Okay, so yes, I'm with you on the school thing, but guess what else preps you to be a follower? What did we just do on this call? Hey, how many seconds? How many years is a trillion seconds? Google spit out an answer and I just believed it, right? So did you. Did you think like maybe Google got it wrong? Did
No.
you think like if I just looked up some other stuff? Do I know if it's right or not? No, I just accept it, right? Because hey, if you have a question, hey Alexa or hey Siri, that's what you do. Like that, but how do you know that's right? Like that also is training us that there's this imaginary authority that knows everything. We should just ask, and whatever they tell us, we just swallow it and move forward. When I was your age, we could debate like what's faster, right? A tiger or an alligator? We could debate that for like weeks. We'd have conversations like in the water, on land. I don't
And
know.
then you'd eventually get to the library and go in the encyclopedia and
you'd
find
find
out.
an encyclopedia that had like one sentence, and you know maybe it said how fast they were, maybe it didn't. But you guys, like, you don't have in less than 2 seconds. You guys can answer that
I would just ask my phone, and it is interesting. Yeah, it is weird, but I guess my question on that is, how do we overcome that?
Well, it's by telling ourselves the truth. Again, it goes back to, can you tell yourself the truth, and can you see your own limitations, and can you understand that you have a very powerful perspective, just like everyone else. You're an incredibly powerful, unique individual, just like every other person who's on the earth. And
Yeah.
when you put that into perspective, you start saying, hey, maybe I don't have a monopoly on the truth. Like a lot of people earlier in this podcast, when I said, hey, what is an opinion you have that most people disagree with? You know what a lot of people will say? When I ask this at events all the time, right? They'll be like, oh, well, that Jesus is our Lord. Like they'll say something like, I'm Christian, I really believe it. Hey, there's 2.6 billion, at least according to Google, well, the Pew, there's 2.6 billion Christians on the earth. I don't know if that's like something that not very many people believe, right? That's a lot of people. That's a
Yeah.
pretty good percentage of the earth that believe that, right? But we go to these safe places. We look for an answer that gets us an A instead of what maybe is the real truth. And so I think to counteract that, we get really, really honest with ourselves. We let other people be really honest with who they are. And then we allow ourselves the freedom to make judgments about that.
Yeah. So
I mean, do you like dogs, Parker?
I love dogs.
Yeah, and there's no problem with that. You
Yeah.
already know that I don't like dogs, but you know what? You do. And what's really crazy is when I see someone loving on a dog. And my son loves dogs. I have videos of him like the dogs just love him. I love watching that.
But
It
it's
still
not for
doesn't
you.
make me like the dog.
Yeah.
But I think that's really cool. It's like, wow, look at that. That's a bond I don't understand. That's beautiful, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the key. Is I'm not trying to make you be heartless and not like dogs like me. And you're not trying to make me love dogs or I'm a useless human being. We can find some other places where we can work together, and we can still do this podcast, even though you
We
are
disagree on
dog-friendly
dogs.
and I'm anti-dog.
Yeah, and I think the issue is with society. We've been told more about in the society we live in. It's more focused on our differences than our similarities, and I think that is such a problem because it just separates a society, and it makes people feel more and more isolated.
Amen, man. Listen, I really appreciate this opportunity to be here on this podcast. I could do this for hours and hours and hours, but eventually I have a family and business to get back to too. Thank you for having
So
me.
yeah, I want to ask you the one final question that
Yes.
I ask my guests, and that one final question is to the person listening right now. What is the one key takeaway, the one thing that you want to leave them with going forward into their lives?
Tell the truth. First to yourself, then to everyone around you, and have integrity beyond the truth. Because the other thing is the truth sometimes changes. Sometimes what's really true for me today in 6 weeks isn't true anymore. So tell the truth to yourself first. Have the courage to tell that truth to the people around you, and then have integrity to own it when the truth changes.
Thank you. Yeah, that was awesome. And I totally agree. All right. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
And thank you guys at home for watching. I'm Parker Amaral. I've been talking to Coach Kevin, and this has been The Conversation Station.